Well, good morning, fellow constitutionalists, and welcome to the Thursday edition of the Dan Clemens Show, a Christian political talk show. This is episode 841. Excuse me, I'm fiddling with some buttons over here on the new mixing board. This is episode 841. I'm your host, Dan Clemens, your constitutional warrior, fighting for your right just to be an American. It is July 13th, the year of our Lord 2017. Remember, we're a hyphen-free, PC-free zone. God is still in control, and He does love you. And I'm broadcasting live from the Hemlock Studios. I am still having problems with my streaming computer. For some reason, it will not. I got everything set up where everything's wide open, and for some reason, it just. I show a congestion. I've been trying to find out what the congestion is. I can't find out what the congestion is. And so my video streaming computer loses connection with my production computer. And it's getting quite frustrating. I thought I had everything set up. I had it running this morning for 2 hours without a hitch. And then I go to come on the show and it starts doing this. Hopefully it'll stay up and running here. I have everything... I am recording everything, so in case I have to start over again, I can do it. I can actually upload it again. I don't want to do that at all, and I'm trying to get my everything adjusted here for my volumes for the recording, and hopefully all my volumes are coming through. I don't know if Dave is going to be on there or not. If Dave's going to be able to. Be with us on the show as far as let me know what the levels sound like. Hopefully I got everything going well with all the levels, and we'll just see what happens here from now on, folks. I noticed I've been trying to play the video back of my preview on the video just to make sure it's working, and that might have something to do with things disconnecting and buffering, so I have to sort of leave that alone. On the network, I know it's working. I was just over there. Everything's good as far as the stream's concerned. So as long as I can see that the stream's working good, we'll keep going here. All right, yesterday was a big push on the internet for net neutrality, and I put out a couple of videos. You'll find them over at the danclemenshow.com, and one of them was about net neutrality. The other one was about they're suing President Donald Trump for blocking people on his personal Twitter account. Saying that he is blocking people's freedom of speech, and so I thought that was kind of funny myself. Funny, you know. It's his personal Twitter account. The White House has a Twitter account. As far as I know, the White House or the government hasn't taken over President Trump's personal Twitter account. They did say they're going to archive everything, but they haven't taken it over, so it's still his personal Twitter account. And as last time I checked, you do have a right to free speech, but you don't have a right to be heard. And this is the way I look at this. So, you know, I did a video about that, and also, like I said, I did a video about net neutrality. And I was doing a lot of research yesterday on net neutrality as far as from a freedom standpoint. I know everything that the anti-freedom folks out there are saying. And this goes back and sort of gets into a topic that we, from time to time, discuss on this program, is about the American education system. We have an education system now that doesn't teach folks basic economics, basic civics about the government, what the enumerated powers are, anything there, are woefully ignorant of how things are supposed to work in this country. They are very well indoctrinated on how people want things to work in this country. And again, this net neutrality, I've asked, and for some reason, either they're not seeing the messages or they just don't care. For some reason, they are ignoring my questions about show me where these problems are. The only thing I've heard, and I like Phil DeFranco. I watch his videos every day. He does have some vulgar language in it, which it's up to him. if he wants to get rid of it, and I guess it's up to me if I want to actually keep listening to it. But he does. He's very entertaining, and he does put out from a different perspective, more of a liberal, the old left-right paradigm, more of that anti-freedom type perspective. And I left a message on his, and he's big, so I don't expect to get a message back from him. But he comes from that idea that the government's protecting us. And I asked a question. I put some stuff down there about, you know, the internet was growing before net neutrality, and this is something that goes clear back in the 1990s, folks. The net neutrality rules that we have for the internet did not come into effect until June 12th, 2015. So my question to these folks, you guys were making money and had free access to the internet, or not free, you still have to pay a cable connection and stuff like that, but YouTube wasn't charging you for getting on or making videos because they were making ad revenues off your videos. So you're making a very good living before net neutrality, and no one throttled your content. There was never, no one ever, I have yet to have anybody give me an example where an ISP was acting the way they say that they're going to act if we get rid of net neutrality. They weren't acting that way when the free market was building the internet, and they're not going to act that way after we get rid of these stupid net neutrality rules. And in the beginning, folks, if you go way back, as far as I go back with these net neutrality rules, way back in the fairness doctrine, and this goes back into my early truck driving days, listening to Rush Limbaugh and stuff, where they were pushing this fairness doctrine on radio, where each side, each point of view had to have equal time on the radio. Well, that was totally bunk. That was ridiculous, folks, because if you can't get your message out there, and you could, there were plenty in the old days, plenty of these really grossly progressive, liberal, anti-freedom shows out there on radio, on the AM dial. But they just didn't have a listenership. They just didn't have a listenership. And boo-hoo-hoo. You have to do that. You have to build that. Rush Limbaugh built his listenership. Glenn Beck. Anybody else that's on the terrestrial radio built their listenership. And there was a listenership to be had out there. The progressives out there, the anti-freedom folks, there isn't that much of a listenership out there for the stuff that they were putting out. Same with on Blog Talk Radio. Back when I first started, and it still is today, conservative political podcasts vastly outnumber the liberal ones. And I know part of the reason on Blog Talk Radio is you can't hardly listen to the progressive political shows because of the vulgarity, the profanity that comes out of them. And so it's all about, this whole thing stems back to everybody has to be equal. They believe in equal outcomes, which is totally a totally erroneous idea. Because you can take, let's say you take identical twins, they're physically, mentally compatible to each other, and start them off on the road, give them an equal footing, give them everything equal to get a start with, and one might be, depending on how you judge success, one of them might be further ahead than the other one. If you judge money as your measurement for success, one might be well ahead of the other one. If you judge other arbitrary, and even money is arbitrary for success, because you can have all the money in the world and be the most miserable person, and so how successful are you in life? So my point in saying this is we all should have, we're all equal in the eyes of God, and we all start off equally. But where we end up is up to us, because each one of us has our own wants, needs, desires, risk levels, enthusiasm, go get 'em, spirit or drive. So it amazes me how these people want all the outcomes to be equal. And folks, this is what net neutrality, whether they want to tell you this or not, this is what net neutrality is all about. They want everything to be equal. They don't want to have competition. They don't want to have to face the reality that maybe they may have to pay a couple bucks to have get some premium stuff. I was watching, I was amazed. I didn't know the number was this big. I was amazed at the amount of freeloaders that are on Netflix. And you know that to me, I'm going to do a video about that too, because I absolutely do not like freeloaders. And I'm just making a note down here so I don't forget that. There, it was a high percentage. It's like 10 to 15% of users on Netflix that stream on Netflix are using somebody else's password to do so. They're not paying for the service themselves. I mean, where in the world is that right? And quite frankly, I do watch a lot of full-time RV folks out there, and and I don't want and not I don't care if they get mad at me, but I'm just going to put this out. There are a lot of them out there that do a lot of things, not to hold their whole existence, but they do a lot of things that are freeloading. What do I mean by that? Well, they piggyback off of Wi-Fi networks. Either they're at campgrounds. A lot of these full timers boondock, which means they're not hooked up. They're not in a campground. They're on Bureau of Land Management lands, or they're in rest areas and stuff like that to avoid paying the cost of going to a campground or something like that. And so they have these Wi-Fi rangers that they put up, and if they find an open Wi-Fi network, they hook onto that, and they use that to upload their videos to YouTube. And these folks make money off these YouTube videos, folks. So this freeloading goes on quite a bit, all over the place. And I try not to be a freeloader. Now sometimes I try not to, and if I do, I apologize for that. But this is a mindset in America that we have to have all this stuff for free, especially with these folks on the internet, especially these huge YouTubers. Now, nothing against Phil DeFranco, but the guy is rolling in the dough. And good for him. I applaud him all day long, because he built his brand, he built out what he's doing right now, and he's making good money, has good money. You know, he's a multimillionaire. And so, you know, he's building something up, and I applaud him for that. But in the same token, I'm just going to stick on Phil, and like I said, I'm not hammering on him. I just want to use him as an example. He uses free market capitalistic ideas to get where he's at today. That's what built the internet. That's what made it great. That's what continues to make it great. And innovation that's still ongoing out there. They still had another story this morning on One American News Network where Microsoft is they've already put some of these up. I guess they got a couple 100,000 people on this wireless access over the white noise TV broadcast bands. And they're hooking into local ISPs wherever they're at, but they're using this technology to get folks in these ISPs to get hooked up to the internet. So they're not beholden to Verizon. And these are out in remote areas where these big ISPs are talking about, like Cox Communication, Turner Communication and stuff. They're not out there. They don't care. They're in these big cities. That's where they're making their money. And even in the big cities, you have more than just like Verizon Fios. You got more than cable. You can get your internet over either of those. You can get your internet over your cell phone. You can make your cell phone into a Wi-Fi hotspot and do that. There's actually Wi-Fi networks in the cities you can hook up to. There are, and I'm trying to pin down the number, and I'm still looking to see where it's at, but somebody suggested that there's something like 4,800 ISPs in the United States, commercial ISPs that sell, you know, there's some folks that have ISPs where they just do like their families, like they live close together, something like that. I'm talking about commercial ISPs you can buy into. So pray tell, if there's that many ISPs out there, how can one or two ISPs control the whole thing? They can't. I know they bundle up and stuff like that, that smaller ISPs use bigger ISPs, things along that line. But what I'm trying to say is, folks, is there's so many choices out there that we can make. There's no way in the world, and I'm talking about individuals or you know, and we're talking about our choices about anything we do in life, including hooking up to the internet. There's so many choices we can make out there. There's no way our outcomes are going to are going to be equal. And if, folks, the more choices and ways we have to get onto the internet, the less the likelihood is of an ISP acting badly or behaving badly. And free markets have always done a better job of regulating bad actors in the free market. And I don't normally do a monologue this long, but I just want to get into this, folks. As far as choices, and I like using grocery stores as my favorite example. Now, a regular grocery store will have, 6, 7, maybe 8, up to a dozen choices of one particular item. Maybe a dozen's too much, but they'll have multiple, 5, 6 choices of one item. And if you go to the grocery store and you buy an off-brand of green beans and you take it home and you eat it, and they are nasty tasting, are you going to go back to the store and buy those same green beans? No, you're not. You're going to pick another one. And then if those aren't good enough for your taste, you pick another one. And maybe go up in quality or name brand, whatever. It's the same way with hooking up to the internet. Now people say, well, I only have one choice. Out here in the country, yeah, I only have one choice. It's either the cable, or if there's a Wi-Fi hotspot that I can barely hook up to, if they would expand that, or if I could get that Microsoft thing in this area, then there would be a choice between the cable and, getting on one way or the other. Okay? And like I said, in the big cities, there are multiple choices, just people don't choose to go those routes for whatever their reasons are, and that's up to them. And it's up to the consumers to police these ISPs. This idea that all these big bad corporations, we can't do anything to them. Look, Chrysler and Chevy, they've lost my business for a lifetime. Now, I don't go out and buy new vehicles all the time, but I won't even buy used ones, so I don't have to buy into their parts to keep them up because of what they did under TARP. They took that money, and they shouldn't have. They should have went through bankruptcy, took their lumps, and came out probably stronger and better in the long run than what they did going through TARP. Now, me, myself, if I'm the only one in America that does that to Chrysler and GM, it's not going to matter to them whatsoever. But if enough people got the idea in their head that what they did was wrong, and I'm not going to participate in it, I'm not going to support it by buying their products, then GM and Chrysler would change their tune. Now, it's water under the bridge and over the dam right now, all this TARP money. I haven't checked lately. The last time I checked, they still hadn't paid it all back. And they're supposed to be very profitable. They got, number one vehicles in the industry, things like that. So it just, again, I try to bring it down to simple things. Your grocery store, most folks buy groceries in a chain, which is a corporation. Wise Market's a big, huge corporation. Giant Foods is another one we get them off of, big corporation. Aldi's, big corporation. Save-A-Lot is another Aldi's type one, very discounted grocery store chain, but still they're a corporation. And you can choose. There's, I just named 4 places in our area, plus Surplus Outlet and a couple other smaller places, but I'm talking about main, bigger chains. I just gave you 4 choices I can go to do grocery shopping if I don't like what one place is doing. Or I may shop one place because they have the best of this item that I want or these items that I want, then I'll go to this other place because, and we do this at Aldi's, for a lot of the stuff we buy, the quality is very good, and that's where, and the price point's where we want it to be, so that's where we do most of our shopping. But the meats are better over at Giant or over at Wise's because they're fresher, especially at Wise's, they're fresher, and they have a lot of good specials on them, so we'll split up our shopping that way. And the same way can happen with the internet. But our education system has so many people so indoctrinated to believe that the government is the end-all be-all to make everything equal and safe for everybody. And they don't realize how bad. And matter of fact, one more thing with Phil. I said I don't want to hammer on Phil DeFranco. His researchers were doing some things on Medicare, Medicaid, insurances and stuff like that, and had stuff written all over their tables like a whiteboard and their walls like a whiteboard. Had all this stuff written all over that. And, he said, man, that's a lot of information and stuff like that. And I don't, because of the indoctrination, he's quite a few years younger than I am, because the indoctrination in the education system he went through, and all the, I don't know the news outlets that he follows or anything. I don't know if he tries to separate these out between freedom and anti-freedom news outlets and news and the facts and everything like that. But, you know, Obamacare, government takeover of health care and health insurance in our country was an abominable mess. And quite frankly, folks, and we said this years ago, that it was never going to work, and it wasn't their intention to have it work. Their intention was to have this fail and push us into a single payer. Now, I don't doubt if Hillary Clinton became president of the United States instead of Donald Trump, we'd be heading towards single payer like California's talking about. I have no doubt about that in my mind. And there are days I thank God for Donald Trump that they're not going that way. But you see how big a mess Obamacare is because the government's running it. Can you imagine if the government took total control of the internet? You think you have free internet access now? The government's going to start picking the winners and losers. If they don't like what you're saying, guess what? You're a loser. And you're not going to get your message out. Not in regular ways anyway. So this whole idea of net neutrality and stuff like that is just, I don't know. Some of these folks really need to sit down and take some economic courses in free market capitalism. Today's show is being brought to you by one of my affiliate marketers, GearXS.com. And they have daily sales going on, folks. And they, right now, summer's in full swing. They have swimsuits and dresses to put over your swimsuits and flip-flops and chairs and hiking equipment, fish, everything. If anything you'd ever want to see, go over to the DanCleverShow.com, click on the GearXS widget over on the right-hand side, and take you to the website. Look around there and see what's going on over there. Like I said, they got some fantastic deals going on every day, it seems like, over at GearXS. All right, today's daily Bible reading comes from Matthew chapter 24, verses 32 through 35. Now learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you also, when you see all these things, know that it is near at the door. Surely I say unto you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. Now, he was talking about the parable of the fig tree. He was talking about that generation he was talking to right there. And all the things he was talking about of the coming kingdom was going to be fulfilled before that generation passed away, and it was. On the day of Pentecost, and if you go to the book of Acts, that's when Christ's kingdom, the church, was established here on earth. And, you know, he was talking about here that by no means this generation will pass away until these things take place. And heaven and earth will pass away, but my words by no means will pass away. And we have them still today. One of the fantastic things about the Bible is no matter how many skeptics have hammered against the Bible, guess what? It's still here. It's like that old visual story about the anvil and the hammer. You know, this anvil's 200 years old. It's passed down generation to generation, and there's a pile of worn-out hammers next to it. And a gentleman asked, a city slicker was out there and asked the blacksmith, he says, how many anvils did you go through to get this pile of hammers, these worn-out hammers here? And he said, I haven't gone through the first one yet. And they can hammer and hammer all they want against God's word, but it's not going to go away. The quote of the day is from Dr. Rodney Rothman. Who needs fathers? We all do. We especially need our Father in heaven who forgives our parenting inadequacies for Jesus' sake and who enables us each day with a fresh start. Just as the loving Father in Luke's Gospel welcomed home his lost son, our Father will one day welcome us into heaven together with all others who love and trust in Jesus. We all need fathers, folks. We really, really do. Today's short Bible lesson comes from Al Shannon from BiblicalProofWordPress.com, and it's just a real short title, and it's a good lesson if you want to go over and read it. Preach boldly. And hopefully on this show I don't get too preachy, but I boldly proclaim the truths as I find them. Not as I see them, but as they are presented in facts and in reason. So go to the DanCleverShow.com and click on that link over the show notes page for episode 841. I don't have them up today. I got my new mixer in today, and I was putting that together before the show started, and I'm still waiting for 2 more pieces to come in because I thought it had regular main out jacks, and it doesn't. It's XLR jacks going out, so I had to get adapters for the mains. So, but it seems like everything's working very well right now on here. So, and I haven't had any feedback on my levels yet. So hopefully, I'll check them out at the show. Hopefully, they're everything looks like it's really pumping out there on the show. So, it's a work in progress, but hopefully I'm getting most of my troubles behind me. You said I wasn't sure why I was buffering on my streaming computer, but knock on wood and praise the Lord, that seems to be working good now. All right, now yesterday I wanted to get into a few things here today, but I told you yesterday I was doing a little research on this story about new House bill would kill gerrymandering and could move America away from the two-party dominance. And the one thing that I wanted to talk about here, and gerrymandering is something that is very, very political. I mean, it is so political that I got to get over here. There it is. Why didn't those save? Oh, you know, I might have been saving them in the wrong one. Anyway, I didn't have everything open up here, but gerrymandering, this new House bill for gerrymandering, basically what they're talking about is when the census comes around and they talk about the population, some states lose, and they're talking about congressional House seats. Some states lose congressional House seats, and some gain depending on the population. And then what happens in that state, whatever political party is in power, they can redraw the districts. And a lot of times what they do is they actually go in, and I don't hear the Democrats complaining about this too much, but both sides do this. The Democrats and the Republicans do this. They go in and get the voter rolls and find out where the Democrats and Republicans live because they have their home addresses. And then they'll draw the district lines through this. And I never understood that. I never understood why they would. I know why they would do it, but I never understood why people let them, why we the people let them get away with that. And now they're talking about this bill in here, talking about the starting up. This bill would have the state set up nonpartisan commissions, and they don't really get in a lot of detail, but I can. If I was going to set up something at the state level for redistricting, I would sequester information from that commission. They would not be allowed to see voters if they're Democrats or Republicans. All they'd be able to see is, are these registered voters? And even then, that doesn't, not the whole population of the district votes. So some of that's just guesswork. I don't know if they actually go out and talk to people, but some of that's guesswork. So there shouldn't be any. There shouldn't be any voter rolls or anything like that. They should be just going through, and this amount of people live here, and this amount of people live here. We got to make the district to where, you know, for the numbers, you know, however many numbers they're prescribing per representative now, and just go through and divide up the district that way without regards to any politics. It should be just a head count, just going off the census. And that would be, to me, that would be the fairest way of all to do it. And if you go look at Bernie Frank's old, if you go back and Google this and look at his old voting district, his district was so gerrymandered there wasn't any Republicans in his district. That's how bad this was through Boston, his gerrymandering there. And there's been other ones in the United States that were just as bad as his, but his example that comes to mind. So they're introducing this bill to try to take care of the gerrymandering, but they're also a couple things here. First off, they made a comment in here: gerrymandering combines with the way voters have sorted themselves into cities and rural areas, means that even Democrats consistently win a majority of votes cast for House candidates, but Republicans wind up controlling the House representatives regardless. Now, wait a minute. That's a blanket statement. He didn't give any proof to that. I have another story in my folder here where they're talking about um, the myth of that actual, the total myth of that, of how these folks are actually just lying. I hate to use that term, but they're lying to people about this. The Democrats always get the popular vote. Well, if they got trust me, folks, in districts, in a congressional district, if they got the popular vote, they won the district. And again, there's going to be some low information voters out there that are just going to believe what they read without doing any research or reasoning, and say, yeah, they're right. We got to do some of these other things. I'm looking for where I do not know where I put those other stories that I had set up today. I had a bunch of them up here for the oh man, and I clicked out of them. Anyway, I'll remember most of them anyway. But in this story, getting back to the story, they talked about a couple of other things they could actually do for this, just besides the taking care of the gerrymandering. They were talking about, let's see here, Congressman Don Baer introduces Fair Representation Act to reform congressional elections. Now, what they're talking about here in the Fair Representation Act is to restore the faith which so many Americans have lost in our political system. This bill would ensure that every voter has their voice represented in Congress and make real progress towards bipartisan focus on getting the results for the American people. Now, he's talking about, I gotta get down in here. The Fair Representation Act is the most comprehensive approach to improving congressional elections in American history, said Rob Ritchie, the executive director of Fair Vote. It creates an impartial national standard that gets to the core of Fair Vote's mission, giving voters greater choice, a stronger voice in representative democracy that works for all Americans. Now, again, these folks use that term, and whenever you see that term, you know that they're anti-freedom when they talk about representative democracy, because we're not a representative democracy. We are a representative republic, and there's a difference. And they'll try to argue to the death that there isn't, but there is a huge difference there. The Fair Representation Act would move U.S. House elections into multi-member districts drawn by independent redistricting commissions elected through rank choice voting. The multi-member districts would be effective in states apportioned 6 or more seats in the House and would elect 3 to 5 representatives each, depending on the size of the state. Taken together, these 3 measures would incentivize congressional candidates to appeal to a broader range of voters. Now, you can do that on the state level if you want. And there's only a couple states that actually do that. And I was trying to read up on how successful it is, and it's hard to get the stories on this. But there's this pesky little thing called the Constitution that limits the number of representatives. And this is why they've had to go back through and redistrict things when populations move throughout the country. So first off, they'd have to amend the Constitution even for this to come into effect. Secondly, if you read between the lines here, this Fair Representation Act is going to give, and this is something they've been trying to do do an end run around the Electoral College and the way presidents are elected, and also to give the bigger states, well, we got more population, we should be represented more, and they are. They have more seats in the House of Representatives than anybody else, but they're not satisfied that. They want some of these congressional seats might have up to 12 representatives from the one district in that state. So these states are going to be overrepresented in the House of Representatives. I mean, by far. And if that happens, if something like this would get passed, that would be the end of the republic as we know it. Because we're going to have we're going to have way too many people in D.C. And in my opinion, the fewer people have in D.C., the better the country is. And second, if that happens, you're never, ever going to have anything ever again from the center of the country. The flyover country is dead because the east and west coast would be ruling the country. That's just the way it's going to be if some nonsense like this gets through. And these are actual bills that are put up. Now I looked, and there's not been a lot of work done and push, coming out of committees and stuff. And hopefully the Republicans will hold fast on this, because you know what? There's nothing wrong with the system we have today as far as how many representatives we have in Washington as far as in the House of Representatives. The problem is the way the states do things, especially with the Electoral College. Pennsylvania is one of them. It's a winner-take-all state. So if, and Donald Trump won the state, won all the electoral votes in the state with the winner-take-all, which tells me that there was some districts in this state, and they definitely went for Hillary, that were disenfranchised with that. Because Hillary won those districts. And so if she won them, she should get to count them. This winner-takes-all is a huge problem in the United States. And then the other thing with this Fair Representation Act, this ranked voting, basically what you do is you go in and you pick one. Sometimes like this year in Pennsylvania, we had 4 or 5 choices for president. I voted for Darrell Castle of the Constitution Party for president. And it was my honor and privilege to do so. But what they're actually talking about is, as far as House of Representatives, ranked voting, let's say you have all these multiple representatives, what you do is you pick out your first, second, third, and I don't know how many choices. It depends on what the state wants to do. Let's say they give you up to 4 choices. You pick your first choice, second choice, third, fourth, and fourth choice, and so on. What happens if you only like one of them and you really don't want any of the other ones elected, and you don't do the ranking? Then what happens to the system? Then you're going to have a handful of people that may do the ranking, and then you're going to have somebody get into office that may not have the support of the voters. And it's really convoluted the way they're talking about doing this. And like I said, some states, I think Minnesota, I think is one of them that actually does the ranked and multi-representative districts in Minnesota. And again, I'm doing some research to see how these things actually work, but I can't see these things doing a lot of good for the people. I really can't. So this kind of makes me mad on these. I had a bunch of these other ones that I had. Let me see here. I'm going to try to look for these folks real quick to try to find out what I thought I had them going in the episode 841, but they're not showing up in 841. And let me look down here. Yep, that's where they got into. Why did that happen? Okay. I'll have to resave these bad boys. I don't know how I was actually putting things in the right folder. Get that one out of there. I do apologize for this, folks. Blumenthal. Senator Blumenthal is really getting under my skin with this Donald Trump Jr. thing. All these folks on the anti-freedom side out here are screaming bloody murder about what's going on in government, okay? And what's actually there's no law been broken. We talked about this yesterday with Donald Trump Jr. No law broken. Was he foolish? Yes. Was it had the looks of impropriety? Yes. Does it rise to the level of criminality? No. But see, that's not part of the narrative that the Democrats are pushing right now. The narrative that the Democrats are pushing right now is he broke campaign finance laws, he colluded with the Russians, and he needs to be held accountable for treason. And yet, again, if you go read those emails, I shared them on yesterday. I shared the link for them on yesterday's program. If you go read those emails, there's nothing to it. like I said, was he foolish? Yes. Was he watching out for the optics of it or the looks of impropriety? No. Has he learned his lesson? I hope so. I hope he's learned his lesson to the point where that's not going to happen again. Okay, that he's going to vet or people are going to vet things. And so this whole idea that I want to look up. A Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee said Donald Trump Jr. may face prison time if he's criminally charged and convicted of his communication with a Russian lawyer who offered opposition research to the Clinton campaign last year. These emails are textbooks evidence of criminal intent. It is a bombshell for the investigation because the most difficult element of any case is criminal intent to prove, and it will lead we have here, folks, with this is they are still pushing this criminality, but there's no charges are forthcoming. There's no criminality that has been going on with this whatsoever. There's absolutely nothing. There's nothing to it. And yet the Democrats are going to push this for all it's worth. They're going to keep it in the news. Their supporters, the anti-freedom legislative movement by the Democrats, anything like that. It's not there. And again, it amazes me. It amazes me how this story continues to go forward. It's unbelievable that this Russian, there's been no evidence whatsoever, and it's still in the news, and they're still pushing for things. This Donald Trump Jr., this happened over a year ago. And I'm not saying if there is something criminal about it that should be investigated, but you think they've had a year to look into this. Somebody did. And they found nothing. And again, it's part of the Democrats' narrative. When it comes to Donald Trump, they want to bring him down. They don't want to fight him legislatively. And this is where they should be fighting the president legislatively. They should be blocking everything they can in the House, and they should be putting forth their own ideas politically. You know, that's the way opposing political parties should work. Now, sometimes there's some compromise on some common ground, but if they're going to work against the president, they do it within the scope of politics. What they're doing is using the mainstream media as a weapon, and they're using these allegations that cannot be proven at all. They're using these allegations that cannot be proven at all against Donald Trump, and they just keep it raised up. They keep the dust and the mud up to the surface, and they just keep stirring things up. And it's beginning to blow back on them. It really is. And I honestly, not that I'm getting totally tired of it, but politically speaking, this is going to condemn them in 2018 because their constituents are going to look at them. And 2018 elections ain't that far off, honestly, politically speaking. They're going to ask them, what did you do? Oh, we made sure that the mainstream media kept the Russian collusion story, which really had no basis, is fake and fabricated, front page so we could stop President Trump and his legislative agenda. Oh, but the Supreme Court upheld his travel ban. Well, we're still working against that. He's wrong in that. Okay, but the Supreme Court said that he was following law, case law, or not case law. He was following actual laws that were on the books. Didn't create any new laws. Didn't legislate from the executive office. Okay. What else? What else have you done? President Trump has rolled back. And like I said, I'm not a fanboy of President Trump, but I give him kudos when he does right, and I criticize him when he does wrong. His trade deals, he's wrongly thinking about trade and free trade and all that kind of stuff. But he's rolled back regulations in the EPA. Hopefully, after yesterday, And this video I saw with Director Pai with on Reason TV, that they're going to roll back net neutrality and make the net even freer than what it is now, to the consternation of a lot of ill-educated folks out there. So there's some positive things he's doing there. Because of his strong stance on immigration, people coming illegally across our southern borders has slowed down dramatically. And I'm just reading the other day an article about that, where Democrats and the anti-freedom folks over here are mad about that. I think that's a good thing. He didn't even have to build a wall yet, and he's already slowed down the illegal immigrants in the United States. And there's a lot of things he's done. He signed an executive order, which is his right to do, on health care, to just do away with the taxes on the health care. So this year, if I don't have health care, I can say I don't have health care and not have to pay the $2,000 penalty for not carrying health insurance. Not health care, but health insurance. So there's a lot of good things he's done. He's reopened up the coal industry. The energy sector, I have in part of my retirement portfolio, I have stocks in through mutual funds. On my IRA, I have stocks in the energy sector, and they're doing very well right now. Thank you very much. And they should continue to grow, especially under President Trump. And it's not that we're destroying the environment to do so, and I think he's enhancing our lives. He got us out. He not got us out of. He just said we're not going to support the Paris Climate Accords. That was a bold, good move, and that's got the anti-freedom crowds out up there in a tizzy. And again, there's a lot of things that President Trump is doing behind the scenes, and it seems to be behind the scenes because all you see out front by the mainstream media is President Trump and this Russian collusion story. There's got to be something to it. There's so many accusations out there, we just got to investigate it. And that's the sad part about it. Yeah, the FBI and other investigative bodies like Congress, especially the House Representatives, they have to investigate these allegations. But I honestly, and some of the investigations I saw, I didn't see the FBI because they keep theirs pretty well hidden. But if you watch some of the hearings, especially the House and both House and Senate does this, instead of trying to look at where this started, how did this, if there's something to this Russian collusion story, let's just go with the collusion story. Let's see where things start. Now, the guy, and I don't have his name at my fingertips, but they're talking about this on One American News Network this morning. The guy that was behind that, all the paperwork about the Russian hooker and all that kind of stuff, the dossier, that's what the word I was trying to. He is actually the House, I think the House Intelligence Committee is trying to get him to come and testify before them. I don't know if they didn't say it was a done deal, but they're trying to get him to testify before them. And folks, that's there again. That dossier was false and fabricated, and it was proven. Yesterday we talked about Guccifer too. He was the guy that supposedly hacked the DNC servers. Well, come to find out, through a forensic analysis, they couldn't have been hacked. It had to be someone actually had direct access to the server on a computer that hooked up to the server to download that much information in a short amount of time on the timestamps on when it was downloaded. And now some people, and I'm not one of them, but some people are speculating that might have been Seth Rich. And that's, I don't go into conspiracy theories. It does amaze me how they sort of sweep under the rug of the death of Seth Rich and say it was a mugging when nothing was taken. And I don't want to get into all that. So, but Senator Blumenthal, Richard Blumenthal, he's from Connecticut. And again, wasting time and wasting taxpayer dollars by actually going after these folks. Let's see what else I have on here. This is there's another story. I'm not going to get into it, but remember I was talking about the gerrymandering. They said like 80% of Democrats take the popular vote, and why there's so many Republicans. There's a really good story over at Real Clear Politics, published on January 5th, 2015 by Sean Trend, The Myth of Democrats' 20 million vote majority. And that's, again, using that other statement in that other article, if Democrats had that many much more voters and they'd win the popular vote, did those people, one, did the people vote? And two, are they legally registered voters? Those are two questions that need to be asked. And I didn't see that in either article, but I mean, that needs to be asked. There is an article, Huffington Post putting out an article on the 12th of this month by Molly Riley. Report says U.S. intelligence agency heard Russia officials discussing Trump team in 2015. Now, this is a story off of, let me go over here. This is a story that's based off a Wall Street Journal report. Now, you go over and try to read the Wall Street Journal report, unless it's behind a paywall, so you can't read the whole thing. But even in the beginning, there's no named sources whatsoever. And this has been the issue throughout this whole thing, throughout the campaign, throughout the almost 7 months into this year. These have all been unnamed sources that are talking about this. So we have no concrete information whether they were or weren't. And folks, honestly, I think there needs to be some behind closed door intelligence investigation by the FBI, the Senate, the House, to find out who the heck are these people that are supposedly talking to everybody, to find out where these leaks are coming from. And again, this is another one of these very anti-freedom news sources like the Huffington Post that is running with a story that was put into the Wall Street Journal that cannot be confirmed. And if you can't confirm it, you shouldn't run it. But the anti-freedom press out there, they don't care about if you can't confirm it, don't run it. So that's also in the news. It just caught my eye last night. There's another, I want to get to a couple real quick stories here. There's, let's see, Democrats. Democrats work for Natasha, the Russian lawyer. Radical left-wing icon, California Democrat Representative Ron Delamus was a hired lobbyist for Natalia, the Russian lawyer who met with Donald Trump Jr. June 9, 2016, the Daily Caller News Foundation investigative group has learned. Delamus, who represents liberal San Francisco and Oakland, California, is a longtime darling of left-wing political activist. He served 13 terms in Congress as an African-American firebrand and proudly called himself a socialist. He retired in 1996. The former congressman is one of the several high-profile Democrat partisans who was on Natalia's payroll, working to defeat a law that was the hated object of a personal vendetta waged by Russian President Vladimir Putin. The national outcry was erupted in the establishment media about Trump Jr.'s meeting with Natalia, but there has been little focus on the Democrats who willingly served for years on her payroll. And so this article goes down and talks about a bunch of other ones in there. So this to me is looking more and more like a setup job with the Democrats and Natalia. So again, it's the more news comes out, and we talked about this yesterday, letting the sleeping dog lies, the more you kick that dog, the sooner or later that dog's going to get up and bite you. And it just seems like it's never ending with the Democrats because it's their narrative, it's their number one goal to do whatever they can to get Donald Trump out of office, to impeach him, whatever, to bring him down, to bring this presidency down. And it is blowing up in their face time and time again. Again, with an article like this coming out where they give the references and stuff like that, they have the proof that backs it up. It's starting to look more and more like a setup than anything else. Finally, I thought this was funny. Most of you know anyway, that I am not a big fan of labor unions. If you want to be a member of them, fine. But I should be able to work without having to be a member of a union, and I shouldn't be berated because I'm putting my services out in the free market to do something. And if the company that I want to work for is unionized, I shouldn't have to join a union to be part of that company. And that's been something I've always had against unions. Plus, the name calling they called me years ago, which really didn't bother me that much, but I was laughing at them because I still got to do my job, and their union brother didn't get that. I got a mute button now, folks. Sorry about that. So this article here, I thought this was funny. It's by Brittany Hunter over at fee.org, and she posted it today. Labor unions are now filing grievances against goats. I'm not going to read it to you, but basically what it is the Michigan, University of Michigan has well-maintained and well-established relations with these unions, take care of the grounds and stuff like that, but they have some wooded areas. And in these wooded areas, weeds with poison ivy and everything grows up. And they were looking for a non-chemical, easy way to get in there and take care of the underbrush in these wooded lots. Well, they hired, and I've heard this before, but they hired a goat herd. Let the goat herd go in, and they cleaned out all these wood lots. I don't know if you've ever seen areas where cattle and goats actually graze in wooded areas. They look nice. They're nice and trimmed back there, and a farmer doesn't do anything. And these goats evidently eat the poison ivy and everything. Doesn't bother them. And the union really didn't say anything about that because the union workers didn't want to do that job. Well, what happened was it was during the summer, so they let them just start grazing the whole grounds. And so they were keeping the whole grounds clipped and fertilized. And that's where the union workers took umbrage. So now they're taking the university and these goats to court for breaking their contract with the union because the goats, they can't compete against the price of the goats. And the goats probably do a better job of trimming and keeping the weeds down and the grass trimmed. I'm just saying. I'm not saying that union workers don't do a good job of mowing grass, but it is a cheaper alternative, and that's just something I want to tell everybody. If you have a wooded area or a yard and stuff like that, like I have a wooded area behind me, if it was mine, I definitely have some goats come over here and have them a couple times a summer and just keep everything cleaned out. It's a real cheap, easy way to do that. But I thought it was funny that the union was taking the University of Michigan and these goats to court. It's funny. It really is funny to me anyway. Maybe not funny to you if you're a union worker, but it happens to be funny to me. And I just thought, that was just great. That was fantastic. And I always like to try to end the show on an up note, if you know what I mean. Folks, this has been the Dan Clements Show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior. Fight for your rights just to be an American. And remember, if you aim at nothing, you hit it every time. Have a great rest of the day, and God bless. And we'll see you guys tomorrow at noon for Free for All Friday. One of my favorite days of the week, folks. Have a great day, and God bless.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.